It was a heritage Nigerians were proud of. It was one of the biggest employers of labor at the time, having more than 10,000 workers on its payroll. Nigerians, especially students who had experienced cheap and almost free flights on Nigerian Airways, could still recall with nostalgia the fond memories of the once thriving national monument. Like many other institutions that were born out of sheer ingenuity and foresightedness of the founding fathers, Nigeria Airways has been killed, though some stakeholders attribute the fate suffered by the airline to mismanagement and corruption, which significantly shrank the operational capacity of the airline as at the time it was being liquidated. Others hold the opinion that killing the airline should not have been the solution to the insolvency of the airline. In fact, those who are privy to the operations of the airline said the assets of the carrier were more than the liability. Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Gabriel here again. If you're joining us for the first time, kindly consider subscribing. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and also invite your friends to the channel so our videos can go viral. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much. We sincerely appreciate. So without wasting much time, let's dive right into a brief history of the Nigerian Airways before its liquidation. Nigerian Airways Limited, more commonly known as Nigerian Airways, was a Nigerian airline. The company was founded in 1958 after the dissolution of the West African Airways Corporation, WAAC. It held the name West African Airways Corporation, Nigeria, until 1971, when it was rebranded to the name it had until it ceased operation in 2003. The government of Nigeria owned a majority of the airline, that is 51%, until 1961, when it boosted its shareholding in the company to 100% and made it the country's flag carrier. At the time of dissolution, the airline's headquarters were at Airways House in Abuja. Operations were concentrated at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport and served both domestic and international destinations, mainly concentrated in West Africa. The network also had points in Europe, North America, and Saudi Arabia. The airline was managed by a number of foreign companies, including British Airways, KLM, and South African Airways. Nigeria Airways had its heyday in the early 1980s, just before the departure of a KLM team that had been hired to make the airline efficient and profitable. At that time, its fleet consisted of about 30 aircraft, but the carrier was 2 years behind its account to the extent that aircraft were acquired for cash. Owned or leased, the carrier operated a variety of aircraft during its history, including the Vickers VC-10, the Airbus A310, the Boeing 737 and 747, and the McDonnell Douglas DC-10, of which it flew the last one ever built. Plagued by mismanagement, corruption, and overstaffing, at the time of closure, the airline had a debt totaling $528 million, a poor safety record, and its operative fleet comprised a single aircraft flying domestic routes as well as 2 leased aircraft operating the international network. Nigeria Airways was succeeded by Virgin Nigeria, and the ground facilities were taken over by Arik Air. But what exactly led to the demise of the Nigerian Airways? The introduction of the International Monetary Fund policies, along with corruptions, mismanagement, and overstaffing, led to the steady decline of the Nigerian Airways from the 1980s. The carrier had accumulated significant debt that outstripped its revenue from the mid-1980s, to the extent that aircraft were detained or impounded for unpaid debts. The International Air Transport Association suspended Nigerian Airways in early 1987 from the clearinghouse, which meant that the airline could not issue tickets to fly on other IATA member airlines, and the converse, for accumulated debt of $1.1 million. In late 1987, the airline had debt for approximately $250 million with a revenue of $5 million per month and expenditure of approximately $5,175,000 a month. This situation prompted the airline to increase its domestic and international fares by 100% and 20% respectively in order to raise funds to alleviate the deficit, but this measure reduced the passenger traffic. Even though 1,000 jobs had been cut by late 1986, and 1,700 in the course of the previous year. Nigeria ordered the airline to downsize. The number of employees was about 8,500 at the time, or 500 for each aircraft in the fleet, twice the international average, and to reduce or discontinue unprofitable routes. Going further, in 1988, cost-cutting measures led to the discontinuance of flights to a number of African destinations including Cotonou, Dakar, Douala, Kinshasa, Monrovia, and Nairobi, and to the transfer of some routes to the privately owned airline Okada Air. Some of these routes were resumed a year later. In December 1988, the airline dismissed 3,000 employees, a third of the workforce, in an effort to keep operations afloat. And in the late 1980s, the airline lost a deposit worth $350,000 for not firming up an order for 6 ATRO-42s financed by a Japanese leasing company. The carrier faced in the last DC-10 ever built. The aircraft was delivered in 1989 and replaced an aircraft of the same type that was lost in an accident 2 years earlier. With a payroll of about 6,632 as at March 1990, the airline had a fleet of 3 Airbus A310-200s, 3 Boeing 707-320CS, 8 Boeing 737-200s, and 2 DC-10-30s. A large domestic network serving the 19 Nigerian states was operated, as well as routes to East and West Africa. Intercontinental flights from Lagos to Amsterdam, Jeddah, London, New York, and Rome, and from Kano to Amsterdam, Jeddah, London, and Rome, and from Port Harcourt to London were also undertaken. To further worsen the situation, the carrier suffered a major accident on 11th of July 1991 when all 261 people on board a DC-861 registration CGMX crashed near Jeddah. In 1992, the Nigerian Airways had 3 Boeing 707s impounded in Europe, and the number of flights experienced at a 32% reduction following the termination of services to Conakry, Freetown, and Robertsfield. Privatization was then considered in 1993 with a proposal to split Nigerian Airways into 2 companies, one bearing the same name and operating domestic routes, and a new one named Air Nigeria, which would undertake the international operations. In July 1994, an Airbus was impounded at London Heathrow Airport owing to a debt worth £100,000. On 21st of December of the same year, a Boeing 707 registration 5N-ABK crashed near Hadejia on a Frontier flight from Jeddah, killing 3 of a crew of 5. It was indeed an unfortunate moment for the Nigerian Airways at the time. Further staff reduction continued throughout the first half of the 1990s, and at September 1995, the airline only had 4,500 employees. In 1997, the UK Civil Aviation Authority banned the airline from operating into its territory, citing safety concerns. In return, the Nigerian government barred British Airways from operating in the country. The service was restored in 1998 when the carrier began co-sharing with British Airways, deploying a leased Boeing 747-200 that wore a Nigerian Airways livery and was operated on the Lagos-London Heathrow route with mixed English and Nigerian crews. By the late 1990s, the Nigerian government decided the carrier would be privatized by selling 40% and 20% to foreign and local investors, respectively, and keeping the rest of the shares. In 1999, the International Finance Corporation was commissioned by the Nigerian government to assist in the process of restructuring and privatizing of the airline. Among 3 options, one of them was to partner with a large European airline. Air France, British Airways, Lufthansa, Swiss Air, and Virgin Atlantic were all considered. Another alternative was to liquidate the carrier. Going further, as at April 2000, the number of employees was at 4,516. At this time, an Airbus A310-200, 3 Boeing 737-200 Advanced, 1 Boeing 747-200B Combi, and 1 McDonnell Douglas DC-10-30 served a route network that included Abuja, Calabar, Douala, Dubai, Jeddah, Jos, Kaduna, Kano, Kinshasa, Lagos, Libreville, London, Maiduguri, Malabo, Port Harcourt, Sokoto, and Yola. A fleet that had numbered 32 aircraft in 1984 had gradually reduced to just 3 aircraft in October 2000. The United Kingdom yet again cited safety concerns in 2001 when it refused to allow Nigerian Airways to operate the Lagos-London route, this time regarding the Boeing 747 that was leased from Air Djibouti to fly the route. That year, the IFC withdrew from its advisory position, citing the unwillingness of both the company and the government to carry out the necessary measures that would make the airline attractive to potential investors. Later on, there were various allegations claiming the airline's failure was accelerated by former Nigerian rulers who looted and mismanaged the company, to the extent that the government started an investigation into the disappearance of more than $400 million between 1983 and 1999. Launched in February 2001, a joint venture between Nigerian Airways and South African Airways that mostly relied upon the Johannesburg, Lagos, New York route was unilaterally terminated by the South African carrier in March 2002, citing a decline in passenger numbers and a deficit of over $4.9 million. Going further, in May 2003, when Nigeria Airways had a Boeing 737-200 as its sole serviceable aircraft, the government decided not to pump more money into the overstaffed carrier, but to liquidate it. The decision was based on the declining performance of the airline's last 15 years of operations on the carrier's debt. The number of carried passengers had fallen from 2.1 million in 1985 to just 10,000 in the first quarter of 2003, and it controlled just 6% and 1% of the domestic and international market, respectively. To further worsen the situation, the carrier owed over $528 million, despite the government having injected over $200 million into the company in its last decades of operations. The airline ceased operations in 2003 and was liquidated a year later. The Nigerian government later came to an agreement with Virgin Atlantic and founded the Virgin Nigeria, intended as a replacement. Even though Virgin Nigeria succeeded Nigeria's Airways, the ground facility for the folded Nigeria Airways were eventually taken over by the then startup carrier, Arik Air. This was indeed the sad end of the once glorious Nigerian Airways, the pride of Nigeria. Sadly, the Nigerian government has not owned a national airline since 2003. The successor carrier, Air Nigeria, which was as a result of a joint venture between the Virgin Group of the United Kingdom and a team of Nigerian investors, operated under the Virgin Nigeria brand. Following its termination of the agreement with Virgin, Air Nigeria flew on its own colors until it ceased operations in 2012. So guys, please hit the comment section and tell us what you think about what happened to the Nigerian Airways. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and also invite your friends to the channel so our videos can go viral. Thank you.